Welcome back to Black Guys on White Movies. I am your host, Aaron Covington.
I am the other host, Aman Adumer.
And today we have our first guest of the pod, my good friend of like 20 years, Bernard Harris. How you doing, Bernard?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Great to be here.
Call and response. How's everybody doing on the podcast?
Right. I'm waiting for those answers.
I hope people listening responded. We're great.
I really
We're great.
hope so, too.
Or on your walk, whatever.
Mhm.
This week we're doing the movie Elysium from 2013, starring Matt Damon, Jodie Foster. Those are really the big names. Diego Luna,
Mhm.
a few other really recognizable faces. Directed by Neil Blomkamp. We'll go with
That's
that.
right. Sounds right.
Sure.
It's Dutch, right? That
Mhm.
sounds right.
He's South African and Canadian.
Mm.
Oh, I knew he was South African. I didn't realize he was Canadian as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, interesting. That's going to add a layer to as we get into it. I didn't realize the Canadian part either. Let me read the
For sure.
synopsis and then we'll get into a few things. In the year 2154, the very wealthy live on a man-made space station while the rest of the population resides on a ruined Earth. Man takes on a mission that could bring equality to the polarized worlds. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
that's what it is. The wealthy live on a man-made space station.
Yeah.
The rest of the population is on a crappy Earth.
Mhm.
And Matt Damon takes on a mission, which is a funny way to word it because this is completely a white savior movie
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
that could bring equality to the polarized worlds. So that is like complete white saviorism.
For sure. There's a lot of that in this.
Oh yeah, truly. It was just having a few white people, included Matt Damon, on the regular Earth, like the bad Earth, is the only. You remove them, and it's like, okay, we get it. We get what this movie is. This
Yeah.
is
100%.
We'll get
100%.
We'll get into that too, because everybody on Earth is pretty much Mexico, the way they did it.
true.
For sure.
It wasn't like
It's Brazilico for sure, right? It's like nothing but Mexican and Brazilian actors. Anyways.
100%. Like there was no diversity on Earth. There's like one black guy who's insane who joins as like
Literally.
Marauders. And everybody else was like South American or something, Spanish speaking. Black movie of the week, real quick. It's
Mhm.
not really a black movie, but it does feature darker skinned people, and the lead is a really dark skinned individual. Actually recommended by Bernard when we were talking, texting about things before. City of God. Have
Oh,
you seen City of God?
oh, I love that movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
City of God is so great. Shook up the world when it came out of film fans. Like this was a seminal film of like 2006, 7, something like that. 2008.
Mid 2000s for sure.
Set in Rio.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, and it's about. I mean, what it's about is hard to even describe. It's kind of about this kid's coming of age story, but then it's like quickly about this gang war in the slums
Mhm.
of Rio de Janeiro. But it's just phenomenal. Storytelling, the acting, the editing, the sights and sounds, and like the similarity of that to this movie is how Earth looks and how Earth is like how people are living and kind of hurted is similar to how they are in the
Mhm.
slums of Rio in this movie in City of God.
Yeah.
So you can't watch City of God, even though it's not black, like American black. You can't watch it and be like, I mean, everybody's black. Everybody's black in the movie.
Everybody's black.
But all
Mhm.
the leads, both of the two main gangsters are very dark skinned. The main character, the kid, is very dark skinned. This is just like, yeah, if you're a cinema fan and you haven't seen City of God, I highly recommend it.
It's a
Yeah, I think it's
beautiful
a
movie.
must-see.
Oh, truly, truly. I watched it way back in the day when I was just scrolling through the international section of a library and just looking through random movies or DVDs, and popped up on that one. And you know, this was I would watch the international movies because I knew they were more loose with like the subject matter. And I saw that one, and I saw all the black leads, and I saw the cover, and just it's truly just a beautiful movie all around. And they're able to tell so much story in one movie. Wild.
Yeah, it's I would agree. Absolutely phenomenal movie, seminal to your point, Aaron. And I feel like one of the greatest villains, one of the greatest film villains on in the world, Zay Pecchiano, right? Lil Zay. But also I definitely felt like as we were watching, you know, not to transition it back too quickly into Elysium, but I definitely felt
Let's get back to Elysium. Yeah.
yeah, definitely as I was watching it, I was like, I felt like that was the pitch of this movie. Like somebody walked into a room and was like, it's City of God meets 2001: A Space Odyssey, and like ship it. Like it seemed very, very to the point where like I feel like at the very least the female lead in this movie is straight from City of God, and I feel like there was another a couple of other actors who were from that movie as well. It felt very. It felt like there was a lot of threads of City of God within Elysium, at least from an inspiration piece.
For 100%, like when you watch shows now, like even the Sex and the City reboot, I think does this, but like Bosch does this, The Good Wife, and they use like all the like the guest appearances are actors from like The Wire, and you're like, they watch that show. They love that show.
Yeah.
This guy was definitely like, I love City of God. Oh, I have to get these actors.
100%.
So
Yeah.
general thoughts about Elysium. We'll let the guest lead. Yeah, general thoughts, how you felt about the movie. Think it was good or that kind of thing?
Sure. So when it comes to this movie, I think it's interesting. I think it's very interesting. You know, obviously you got asked me to be a part of this just because I'm a big fan of sci-fi and do a little bit of work in that space. And I think it's very good at, you know, I was thinking about Neil Blomkamp and like his whole thing, because around this time period, he was kind of like a hot commodity. I feel like I remember hearing his name all the time. Anytime there was a movie, it's like, you know, give it to Blomkamp, right? Or he's attached now to this picture or whatever. And I was like trying to figure out like what that is. And I think he's very good at taking like things that are like classic sci-fi tropes and putting them and like visually representing them in film in like dynamic and interesting ways. And I'll as we talk about it further, I'll get into maybe some examples of that. But also, I do think that plot wise leaves a little bit to be desired. And I think, you know, literally the subject matter, the meat of this podcast, right? Some of the social, ethnic, racial stuff is just wild, just absolutely wild. Very unaware in some regards.
No, totally. Aman, what was your thought? This is your first time seeing it, right?
Yeah, this was my first time seeing it, and I had a roommate who really loves sci-fi and would watch it and watch all of Neil Blomkamp's movies. And I definitely seen the South Africa one, the one that was like the alien ship stuck
District
above
9.
District 9.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I came in with that kind of like, okay, this is going to be not even lightly covered social critique or satire. It's going to be pretty like there on the nose, and it was. And that's not a knock against it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. The graphics and the CGI and the cool suits, the tech suits, I love all that. I love like the fights and the the futuristic technology that they have.
Mhm.
I will say that it felt, the pro that I had for City of God in that, oh, it showed you this whole world with all these diverse characters and storylines, and they were able to tell all these stories. The pro I had there didn't necessarily apply to this movie, where I'm like,
Right.
there's so much in this movie, but it feels so studioized, where it's like, and we're probably going to get into the ending, but the wrapping up of it so fast, where it's like, and everything was okay. I'm like, no, there's a war about to happen. How is everything okay? Like, these people, she healed the kid, but now she's on the planet with the people who don't like, I feel like it's the start of something that should have been bigger.
Right.
That being said, it was enjoyable. Yeah.
This definitely gave big, in the modern landscape, the current landscape, this movie's modern, but the current landscape where, oh, it should be a series, definitely had big, is this a series vibe? Because it tried to cover a lot. So my thoughts are, I think I tried to watch this, not in the theater, but like when it first was on, I don't know, streaming or TV or whatever, and was not feeling it. But now, 10 years later, this movie maybe should find a cult status because it's prescient now. Everything that this movie is talking about, now we're like staring at it. Like the idea of rich people having their own place orbiting Earth, like a giant space station, like that is now, it's not, to me, it doesn't seem like a possibility. Like it's not a real thing, but it is something people are literally trying to do or trying to figure out or talking about, or, you know, the billionaires of the world are trying to constantly trying to separate themselves in some way. So then that feels real. All the AI stuff feels now like, oh, this is what is happening. This is what we're facing now. So in that way, you know, this movie feels like it was a little bit ahead of its time. As far as like story and structure, yeah, I mean, it's a little all over the place. Like I wanted to ask you guys, what is this movie about? Like, what do you think this movie is about?
Wow.
Great question.
Right?
Yeah, that's hard to nail down.
It's about everything that was coming in the future. It was about AI. It's about class warfare. It's about space, living in space, or like that kind of technology. You know, it's
About
about
treatment of the earth. And
treatment of the earth. It's about, they have a cure for cancer in this modern medical bay pod.
right.
Yeah.
Somehow
It's
it's about
about
all of these things.
it's about like mercenary private contractor warfare, and like it's like literally everything that was a thread in 2013 when this movie was made. It was just like, let's touch on that.
It's like, look, you know what movies I like? Mad Max, Terminator, AI, you know,
Right. Akira,
Gladiator, Akira, Ghost in the Shell. And let's just jam them together, man.
Yeah. We might not get this opportunity again. Put it all in the movie. Just
and in that way is kind of I mean, in that way, like the ambition is almost admirable, you know, like
Right.
I do, to your point, Aman, like I think that his, like, you know, he does the thing that sci-fi does, which is like social commentary on the modern day in a sci-fi you know, gloss or whatever. And so he does that. And you know, I was talking about this with my sibling earlier, but I really believe that he engages with it in good faith. I think you don't create these stories in which like the downtrodden is the hero against like this social class, economic, immigration, all of his movies, including Chappie, which we haven't talked about, and all that stuff, which I haven't seen. I think it's about immigration, but all of these things, I don't think you continue to make these stories if you don't like have some good feeling for this, and like, you know, that animates you internally. But
Right.
also, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know that the execution is maybe there or whatever. I don't have the answers, but
Yeah.
see a lot of questions.
Go ahead, Amon. Let me hear.
Yeah, I feel like I've noticed this a lot with writer directors who make their own movie. I feel like they can only benefit from having a co-writer, like another person there, because they, as a writer director, I'm sure they're thinking of every element, the visuals, everything, this. So often their message comes out a little too ham-fisted, right? Like, okay, maybe if this had a, you know, a second pass by someone else, they could smooth the edges of this of your message and of what you're trying to say,
Yeah.
so that it feels a little more metaphorical or whatever else.
Definitely like some form of collaborator, another writer, a strong producer, or like
Mhm.
a partner in some way, or that just has a different sensibility for storytelling. Who's
Mhm.
like, you know, people, you know, what's going to make this more either entertaining or intellectual? Because it kind of can't be both in a sense.
Mhm.
Or if you lean heavy one way, you'll still get enough of the other. Like every scene doesn't have to try to be both. You
Right.
know, if you
Right.
look at Terminator 2, which I mentioned, it's like that movie is mostly entertaining, but in that entertainment, you have the questions and the things that really are thought provoking, you know, but it leans into the entertainment more,
Mhm.
but it doesn't lose out on the science fiction aspect. But, you know, Bernard, you bring up a great point. Wait, what were you saying? no, oh, the class, how the sympathy of the compassion, because I think the director is really, like you
Yeah,
said,
compassion. There you go.
compassionate in a way. Oh, I lost my video.
Mhm.
It's a video.
Oh, that's weird. Is the camera
It does
covered?
come from a place of compassion, right?
Mhm.
I do it like this. It should be good. And so that begs the question of what is the compassion of white society, of white creators?
Mhm.
You know, there we go. There we go. I'm back visually. For the audio listeners, I had a visual mishap. Now I'm back visually. Put
You
these
look
on
like you were on. You looked like you were on Elysium, because the Earth was
Right.
behind you.
Yeah.
Party looks like you were sneaking in.
He made it.
I made it. I made it. I'm gonna get cured and hang out with Jodie Foster. I got a job. The compassion
No,
of the white director, the compassion of white storytellers, right?
Mm.
And that is a cultural part. Like, what do they think is the answer? So, like, um, skipping ahead to like the end of the movie, when the artificial intelligence is now reprogrammed,
Mhm.
and he's basically saying like, "Oh, AI isn't good or bad; it just follows orders." You know, so if you
Mhm.
reprogram it, it'll be equitable, equal. You know, or
Right.
like
Mm.
I'm trying to think through the movie. I mean, Matt Damon's whole character, then and the decisions he makes, like
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, I gotta help the girl, but you know, if I help her, then she'll be in trouble." Kind of going back and forth, and then it's like, are any of these things? These things are all kind of one-sided views of how to help people or what is right, you know.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think a lot of times the way it's presented in our culture is like, and like you hear it when you listen to like certain, you know, other podcasts or speakers that kind of buy into Western culture and white patriarchal society and whatnot.
Mhm.
And they're like, this is the only logical way. It has to be like this, you know. When,
Mhm.
you know, Black cultures and indigenous cultures talk more about, you know, we've talked about on the pod before, like community versus individuality, you know.
For sure.
And this movie definitely is like, it takes the individual, but that's
Mhm.
just the message that keeps coming across. And then it kind of also leads to other sides of that, of this individualism, vigilantism, of like,
Mhm.
you know, a good guy with a gun is what stops a crime, and not
Right.
community action, not, you know, the
It's
thoughts and actions of a collective people.
yeah, it feels like the message is you by helping yourself, you can also help other people. Like it doesn't have to just be I'm keeping everything to myself. Because Matt Damon wants to go and do something to help himself out, help whatever his family out. But by doing that, he also opens it up to help the rest of the people. So it's not necessarily all these poor people want to steal from you. It's like giving them the minimum and it'll be fine. They're not going to go insane. They're basically fighting for like healthcare and like a good working environment. Like they weren't being like, we need to live there. They're like, no, we're sick. We need to go over there to get cured.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It feels like that's the messages as opposed to a revolution is just the poor just want to kill all the rich people. It's like, no. Just give them basic things and they'll chill out.
That is interesting. That's a really interesting read, and I agree with a lot of what you just said, Amon. I think it's really interesting what you also just said about healthcare, right? Like, obviously, it's a 10-year-old movie, right? 2013. You think back, you know, you're in Obama's second term and everything, and you know what you've obviously Obamacare's already gone through. The whole DACA fight has happened. If we remember anything about, you know, it's not like this is really insider politics, right? DACA is in the news today, but like it is about like the things that were happening at the time, healthcare and immigration, and it is interesting to see it like that timestamp on just even like the things that the movie's about, and even like that feeling. I was like, you know, Aaron, you said it's a little bit ahead of his time, and I felt that way while I was watching the movie as well. Like I was like, wow, and I was like, is it ahead of his time or is these problems just this old? You know what I mean? Like, and it really is interesting, and that makes me think, you know, like the problems are that old, right? There, you know, you can go back to the 70s and the 80s and have people talking about, you know, a lot of the things that people are talking about today, from the environment to immigration to healthcare and all of these things. And so it really is interesting because while I think there's a lot of value in like, you know, making a movie like this and visualizing a lot of these things, and you know, I'm a huge fan of fantasy and sci-fi, and I think there's a lot of power in them. I think people are a lot more open to a message when it, you know, has lasers or magic or something like that on top of it. But at the same time, you know, the simplicity with which, you know, to jump back to that ending, the simplicity that which this movie ends, which is like, I mean, it almost is like literally like there's that phrase like Deus Ex Machina, like, you know, like it literally is like this machine that is like God, this AI, like literally just comes through at the end and just says, okay, things are good now. And like it's almost an audience expectation that I'm supposed to get up and start clapping. And I'm like, to your point, Amon, that you said earlier, no, this is the beginning of something revolutionary. There's definitely going to be some physical conflict, some violence. There's a lot. And to your point earlier, Aaron, I do think maybe I hadn't thought about it while watching it, but maybe this story is more interesting as a series where you can actually like engage with, you know, the 50-11 questions that they brought up within the space of the plot. And since we now live in an era where, you know, every new series is just a remake of a movie from 10 years ago, this might be the time.
I mean, you know, if I'm Neil Blomkamp, and he just did this Gran Turismo movie, which I think is probably pretty good. I didn't get out to see it, but
it looked interesting.
When I found out it was based on a real story of this mixed guy, darker skinned guy that became a racer. I don't know what circuit, but you know, a car racer. I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting. At first, the trailer just looked like a racing movie. I was like, oh, no, but it's like, oh no, it's a real story. The guy that did it. So that movie looks pretty good, and it's like this might be the, you know, time to strike. The iron is hot.
Oh, truly.
Apple TV, Neil. You know, get your money. Let's go. Um,
Neil, holla at me when we get to black casting. I got a new cast for you.
yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna have the black lead. We're gonna tell you who to cast in about 20 minutes. But Neil's interesting. I don't really know a lot about him. I didn't look him up because that's not really what we're doing here.
Right.
Other than like the Wikipedia page, we said he's Canadian and South African, but it makes me wonder this about America and the message we send, because we often will elevate foreign creatives, even Black. A lot of times you'll see a Black person from Europe or from Africa elevated in American creative spaces. And it made me think about the arrogance of America. The idea that everybody exceptional in the world belongs to us. This is an American kind of unspoken feeling and thought. If you're exceptional in the world, you're really American, or you need to end up here, or you need to come here, and this is the place. No matter what you are or what you do. You even look at Homie that owns Twitter. He's South African, but people, you know what I mean? We want to claim him here because he's so rich and so much in the media and everything. So that's like real funny thing to me, because I mean, if you're an up and coming artist, you can't go to another country and just be popping. They're not going to be like, we got this American director, mate, and he's going to do, gave him $60 million for a movie. That's just not happening. But here it's like, oh man, this person's not from here, and they have some ideas.
Right.
Bingo.
Right.
Well, I'm not saying Neil's not good. I think District 9 was all right. This movie's, decent. He knows how to make a movie. He can handle the size of a movie, but still, it's just interesting to me. And it's not just in film, it's in any creative form, how America will just want to claim somebody else. Like you have to fight if you're a foreigner to maintain your identity once you cross into like the American market.
Yeah.
You have to like remind people, like, I'm actually from here, especially actors, because then actors a lot of times have to lose their accent. And then you see them on an interview and they're like speaking with their accent and it's thick and people are like, oh my God, I didn't know. It's like you have to claim your identity as something else, because America and white American culture is about taking and erasing.
It's
It will
something
erase the past. Go ahead.
No. I can't remember. You guys had an episode a few episodes back. I can't really remember, but I think you were kind of touching on something about this, like, and there's just something about that American culture that everything about it is tailored towards assimilation, right? Everything about it is tailored towards assimilation. I mean, you could really look back, a couple decades and really see that when people like came into the country and like literally they just got an English name. Like, okay, I don't know what you're gonna be Johnson now, right? But like, even still, with like that artistic piece, it really is like a great prime example would be Charlize Theron. When's the last time I heard her speaking anything but an American accent? She's also South African,
Right.
And so that is a really great point. Like you really do have to fight to maintain that. And I do wonder for these directors and writers and storytellers, because I think, especially in film and I think in like literature too, within that artistic space, you do see a lot of this like, ooh, this person's from a foreign country. They must have something so unique and special to say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's true as well. But between the maybe American people within that same ethnic group, if we're talking about, maybe not ethnic group, but racial group, if we're talking about Black foreigners or what have you, whether it's the American not necessarily getting to share their opinion or that foreign person having to like fight to really maintain that view, it does bring up some really interesting questions about like just what the American art scene is and what the American commercial art scene is and what are the pressures there. And honestly, like, how do you maintain, like, I'd love to hear, like, specifically for Neil Blomkamp, like, what are specifically the parts of this movie that are like South African? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
because how do you maintain that, especially when you have like a studio that's footing the bill and probably trying to narrow you into a narrow hallway, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's not really, I'm not trying to cast judgment on it. It's just interesting, and it's kind of like putting people on game. Like recognize that being foreign can be lucrative,
Right.
but also
Sure.
foreign people also sometimes, will change their name to something more American to fit in, to get a chance. So it's not all good or all bad either way, but it's part
Mhm.
it's part of the game. And just kind of looking and analyzing it and thinking about what that says. Like I said, American culture is, I said it's kind of it's about giving and then taking and erasing.
Mhm.
We're taking and erasing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about, the take and erase.
Yeah.
And that's literally every aspect of American history, going back to landing here, the European settlers and the religious zealots who left, who came to America.
Mm-hmm.
They took from the natives, erased. They took Africans, erased their history, erased the past, the take and erase. And that's what happens. And that's what, even when celebrities are like burned out or retired, like this industry, because they're talking about the take and erase. It took something from them, erased a part of their identity or history. It's just constantly happening and constantly a part of the culture of this country. You got to acknowledge, the good and the bad of the culture. Getting right into like the movie, man, kind of going through the plot a little bit. Like Amon said, it opens up in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess that's like to let us know that the wealthy people that left, there's no Spanish when you're on Elysium. That's the space station planet.
Right.
But on Earth, you might be speaking Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And then it cuts to little white Matt Damon as a kid who's being taught all these things from an abuela,
Yeah.
about the earth and how to view it. And that right there, I almost turned the movie off. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, what is going on? Like, you're telling me right at the top, like, white savior, but he learned from the indigenous people, Mexican people, South American people. There's like, I don't know. How do you guys feel about that opening?
I was very confused. As I said, I think probably before the podcast started, I was trying to watch this movie on 2x speed, and then it opens up in Spanish in a different language, and I went, all right, I can't. I gotta read these subtitles. This is what's happening. Because I was looking for a reason why this little white baby was with, the abuela. And if there was like, oh, there's got to be a purpose here. This is part of the message or something. And nothing. Not that I noticed. I might have been watching at 1.5 speed, so I have no clue why this one little white boy was still there. I did think it was John Smith from Pocahontas for sure.
For sure. I definitely thought about Pocahontas. I definitely thought about Last of the Mohicans, which I think is probably the original example and probably still the best one. But like also Dances with Wolves, all of those sort of things where like, the white character is introduced or raised by or becomes brought into another society and then becomes right the Uber example, right? And
the Last Samurai,
The Last Samurai. I feel like I have a little bit of sympathy for The Last Samurai because that plot kind of works out where he's like on the sidelines most of the time, but still like
The Last Samurai is actually a dope movie.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Just the
for
title
sure.
and then it's Tom Cruise. It's like, you can't
On the cover, right?
Yeah.
For sure. There's of course that old Paul Mooney joke that I will not repeat. But you know what I mean? Like I thought as far as like the actual opening itself, obviously I felt like, you know, I've seen Matt Damon on the cover of this, and I've seen this movie before, but like even when I saw it the first time, like Matt Damon's on the poster. Clearly, this kid's probably Matt Damon. They shoot it with like soft focus. It's clearly like a memory. But at the same time, not to push too further forward in the movie, but yeah, I don't know how much this actually came back. Like there's a scene maybe around the midpoint where they flash back again to that like nun character, but
people could have been anything. It wasn't important that that's what they were. They could have even made up like a future language. Like, I mean, this is 150 years in the future from when this movie came out. They could have made like a bastardized language of like Spanish and Chinese and English. And be like, that's what people speak here.
Yeah.
It's 150 years later. We don't speak. It's like language evolves. But then it's like Matt Damon, who I just can't. Matt Damon is interesting because when he was young and, you know, young and striking, he was like a leading man. And I feel like as Matt gets older, he's less of like a lead that I want to watch. But he's still a good actor, you know? And in this movie, the idea of Matt Damon, like, he lives, you know, just with the people in the slums and you know, anything that's telling me Matt Damon's not a cop, it's hard to believe. My man looks and feels.
He really does.
Yeah,
truly.
Just has cop energy as he gotten older. And when he's checking in and the guy's like, what's that? And he's like, hair care products, because he's bald. It's supposed to be a joke. I'm like, that is a cop joke though, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like a cop, man. I don't believe how you're living with the people.
That's I'm sorry, were you gonna go?
Oh, no. I was gonna go. I forgot that kind of the prison industrial complex, it was also thrown into the stew of what this movie is. Because Matt Damon had many felonies and there's a reason like he was there, and maybe that was the justification. But even if that was the justification, he better have like a swastika on his head or something, because if he was in prison and he was just a white guy in prison, you're not coming out like, oh, I'm cool with everybody. You know what I mean? But
that was the thing to me, is like that's what really got me with the Dances with Wolves piece, because like clearly, like with the tattoos and everything that he had and everything, like to me this movie was broadcasting to me that he had a street past, right? Like he's got felonies, he's covered in tattoos just like all the Hispanic people in the barrio that he lives. So like I'm like, okay, so he's like a Hispanic gangster. He's got like his last name was like D'Souza or something like that. It was something
Max DaCosta.
Max DaCosta. So I'm like, okay, like maybe, you know, your grandfather was something. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Okay, that makes sense.
No, he was just adopted by this old
that's probably you're right. You exactly right. That's it.
That was my read.
But like even then it was like, so like he grew up in this neighborhood. Everybody in the neighborhood knows him. Like they talk to him all like he's one of like the older guys from around the neighborhood. You know what I mean? And he's also like, everybody has a little bit of intimidation factor to him. Like everybody kind of talks shit to him throughout the movie, but also only to a point. Like everybody kind of like respects him to a certain level. So like, so you're like getting this idea that he might actually be like a dangerous person too. You know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, so he's like a gangster in this neighborhood, but he's like clearly the best gangster. Like it's that Dances with Wolves thing again. And that so it's funny that you guys bring that up, because I definitely got that side of it too, where he was like also supposed to be the best of the bunch as well, even if what he was doing wasn't good, you know?
Yeah.
Here's another cultural thing that this movie does. I'm gonna jump in here real quick. Is it says, okay, here's the future. And they would justify it like, well, we got to sell the movie and, you know, it's a studio, but so they make the president Indian, President Patel, but everybody important is still white. And then minorities are like, oh, they're one of the goons. They help the other guy. Diego Luna's in there, you know, but it's still Matt Damon, Jodie Foster. The bad guy is a white guy. Everybody making decisions about both planets is still like,
yeah.
And that's something you see in sci-fi over and over, like the future. And then the other part of this is the idea of the future. They're so quick to erase blackness. we're all going to be mixed in the future. I was thinking about this morning.
Mhm.
People have always mixed, I think me and Bernard talk about this a lot, but like in Asia, North Africa, and the Middle East, before colonization and stuff, there was all kinds of people together. In the Americans before colonization also, like there was dark-skinned natives, light-skinned,
Mhm.
it's obviously more of a factor of where you live and your exposure to the sun. Like melanin is a chemical compound in our skin. And in the cultural aspects of it, like people were always intermingling. So the idea that in the future, because of America mainly, this is where it comes from, that we're all going to be like a similar shade because of intermixing is such a white fantasy
Mhm.
that people don't really like we really got to connect to that. That's the idea of the future that they think is equitable, is just the fact that we all, once again, look alike in some way because we're intermixed. And it's an erasure of dark-skinnedness, dark-skinnedness people. And it's a way to appease white guilt and say, well, 3-4 generations from now, even my grandkids will be darker skinned, It's like, so what are we worried about? We'll all be the same, but that would have happened already. That would have happened already, is what I'm saying.
Right.
If you really understand history and like we've all been intermingled.
It's interesting you say that because like I can't remember who it was, but like literally during the during like revolutionary time periods, there was one of the lesser known forefathers. He's not going to be like anybody that's on a piece of money or anything, blanking on his name, but
No
he
musical
literally
about
said
that.
that. Yeah, no musical about this guy, but like he literally said that, like, oh, the future will be like, that was his anti-slavery, was that one day we should all just start mixing because then there will be no problems in this country. So yeah, it's at least a 200-year-old idea, and it
Right.
never really accounts for the hate.
Exactly.
But I think it is really interesting, you know what I mean? Like as far as that goes, like I'm mixed. I'm Black and I'm Puerto Rican, so I do think that there is a lot of that mixing that happens, but then even then it doesn't really happen in the way that like this really happens in real life, right? Like people always kind of just turn out looking, like kind of the Italian idea, even like the Italian idea, and that the Hollywood actor of like that Italian look, right? The kind of tan, medium olive skin and the wavy hair. Even like you run into real Italian people, and right, there's going to be people that are darker, people that are lighter. So it never really accounts for like the way this actually happens. You can meet people who are like mixed from the same parents, one being like, really light, almost white skin with super curly hair, and somebody being super dark with almost straight hair. And it's like, how's this happening? You know what I mean?
Don't even work like that. That's the point.
It's a dice roll. It's not like a cup of coffee where you mix it together. It's like a dice roll.
Yeah. That's such a good point, that we are at the place that they've been talking about, where everyone's as mixed as we are right now. And we still don't look the same. Like you always see those like Time magazine, like this is what the person in 2100 is going to look like. And it's just a beige looking person, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, nah, that doesn't, like you're saying, Aaron, it doesn't necessarily, that's impossible to do. And melanin is a product, is a chemical product. Like where you live affects how you look, and you survive based on that.
Especially over time and generations. Like if I move to Northern Europe, my family stays there for 5-6 generations, we're going to be a lot lighter.
Oh, for sure.
And down the line, my descendants are like, Aaron did a podcast with Amon. And Amon's family moved back to Ethiopia. Maybe we should go connect with them. Right. They connect with Amon's family and live in Ethiopia for another 5-6 generations. They're going to be darker again.
Exactly. That's
scientifically, but then there's also who do they breed with is going to also, like you said, affect how everybody turns out. We either got to accept people or not, and culturally and colorly or whatever. not going to be a future where we just like forget, like you said, forget about the hate because we kind of look alike. It's just not
Right.
how it's going to work. And then we're in Elysium where Jodie Foster is like the military commander or something.
Mhm.
Not sure what accent she's using, but I
Yeah.
don't think it takes away from her character. Go ahead, Jodie, just make up an accent. And like we're kind of late to get to it. I didn't even think about it. Like the plot of the movie is Matt Damon gets hurt at work and exposed to deadly radiation. He goes to see this like underground figure, not revolutionary, but like underground, like not trafficker. I don't know what word to use to describe him. But anyway, this figure is like, I can help you, because the only way for him to get healed is to go to Elysium, the space station, get in the med bay, and they can fix them. They don't have the technology on Earth. And he's like, you do a job for me, and I'll help you get there. He's like a smuggler. He can smuggle people to Elysium, which also doesn't make sense because to cross the border, you have to leave Earth atmosphere and travel to a place. Like they can see you coming, but
Right.
apparently he has some kind of success rate. It doesn't make any sense. It's not like you can't hide in the bushes of space, or across a lake or something. It's insane. But if he can get the knowledge from the brain of this billionaire who comes down to Earth for I don't know what reason, I really can't remember why he was there. But if he can, but they have a technology where you can plug into somebody's brain and get and download their knowledge, right? More or less. So if he can do that and bring it back to the underground guy can use that technology to help the people, then he agrees to take David to Elysium. Even that was a mouthful. I am like sweating trying to get through what that plot was.
Yeah. It took a long time to get to Elysium. I was like, man, where are we in this movie? We're past the midpoint where I'm like, man, they still aren't at Elysium.
And it showed me too, like a lot of problems. Imagination is like the strongest force in the universe. They have the imagination to have this technology to give Matt Damon his exoskeleton suit. That's like great for combat. Also, they can download stuff from people's brains. It's like, but they only have one of them. It's like, where is the imagination to use that tech? Like maybe you can fuse your brains together so that you can create something or attack Elysium or use it in a different way, or maybe you can make more of these exoskeletons and wage a war or something. Instead of it just being like, it can only be this one guy. And then as a screenwriter, I know you have to create obstacles of why they can't mass produce it.
Right. But
to me, it's all like, your imagination is in the wrong places if you really want to help people.
Yeah. They should use like those back in the day with the Game Boys, where you could connect the Game Boys together, have one of those cords, and just start trading stuff like Pokemon and stuff. That they just need that. They need to be able to like, we can't all have it on one person. It would be, I could understand if they were like, I don't want that info. Like, don't put it on me. There's some psychopaths out there going to hunt you down. But I see what you mean. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I feel like in regards to that, there's, like I said, this movie does a really good job at taking like sci-fi tropes and putting them on screen in compelling and dynamic ways. But sometimes some of the things I think are maybe just tropes and don't really get engaged further than that. You know what I mean? To your point, like even just the technology that they use to like give Matt Damon this exoskeleton, with a little bit of thought or interesting, like you said, or imagination, you can maybe think of some more interesting things to do than the way that it goes. And it's funny, time makes a liar out of all science fiction. But one of the things, like talking about the CEO guy, and he's coming down to earth, and everything is like, if anything about modern technology makes that seem ridiculous, which they could not have foreseen, really, I suppose. But it's the technology we're actually using right now to make this recording. Like Zoom gets rid of any
Yeah.
reason for you to ever go down to that planet. You know what I mean? So like in
Right.
2154, my man still has to make that daily commute. I just have a hard time believing it.
Yeah.
But I'll end it up on this, you know, in the one way, in one of the many ways that I do think that it was kind of ahead of his time, was his whole job situation gave me Amazon warehouse vibes nonstop. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, well, that's 100% right. To the point where they don't care about human life, they care about efficiency and getting the
Yep,
thing
get those numbers
done,
up.
get those
Yeah.
numbers done. And then just basically, I love that scene where he gets stuck in the machine trying to fix it because his boss is like, fix the machine or you're fired.
Right.
So desperate, he goes in the machine, gets caught in it, radiation poisoned his whole body. And then they just throw him in this little nurse's corridor with a machine, like a little robot that comes up and goes, before we can give you this medication, sign this.
Yeah.
And he's just desperate, dying of radiation, just like, I don't know what he signed, and I don't know what pills he was taking. But that was like a perfect encapsulation of like, we need to make this run. We need the business to go despite human life, the cost of it.
Yeah. And like the coldness of bureaucracy, like they're just like,
Yeah.
take these pills, it'll make it a little easier when you die in 5 days. And
Yeah.
when he was late,
I
and
thought-
the robot was like, we're gonna dock you to, you know, whatever his punishment was, and he was trying to talk to it. They were like, are you being sarcastic? He was like, what?
Right.
They're like, you want to speak to a human? He was like, no. He was like, then get out of my face. It's a wrap. Decision's been made. And that definitely speaks to what we deal with. If you have kind of any legal or health problem, it's like an automated system, or even if it's a real person, they have to follow a customer service script. And then for all the things that this movie lays out, yeah, at the end it's just a fight. And Matt Damon wins. He's the white savior. He sacrifices himself so that everybody can be a citizen of Elysium. AI sends pods to Earth, and it's going to transport everybody that wants to go there to there. And it's like, if you can build, I was thinking too, you guys can comment on the ending and then we'll get to casting. If you can build an Elysium, you can fix Earth. Again, it's a problem of imagination. If you can build a space ecosystem in space, the way this one was, you could have fixed Earth. But then you don't have a movie. I get it. Sometimes we're commenting on things in the movie that it's like as if the movie was a reality. I get that. But I think it's also a message that's sent. These are the messages that are culturally sent. This is the world that they're creating. You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you guys have any other thoughts, like especially about the ending or anything?
Well, I'd build off of what you was just talking about. I think there's, you know, even earlier was mentioned like Elon or like some of these billionaires now, like, right, they're no longer, they're saying the quiet part out loud, right? Like, people talk about this, right? We'll be able to leave this planet. Don't worry about it. We're working on it now. Like they say it, you know, straight up. And it's such a colonial mindset, right? It's such it's the knee-jerk reaction of people who are steeped in, you know, 500 to 800 years of colonial imperialism. Because the fact of the matter is, you know, there's a sci-fi writer I really like, Kim Stanley Robinson, and he always talks about, you know, if we can terraform another planet, then we can terraform this one and we don't have to leave. Like, if we have that technology, it's just like, literally, do we have the desire or the will to fix our home, fix what's broken, right? Fix our family, fix our situation. Like, you can literally extend it down to the individual and the personal, right? Do we want to stay and fix it? Or do we want to think that we can run off and start something new? And, you know,
that's interesting, because like, you don't have to destroy something to start new. Or to build space stations and stuff. You don't have to destroy the Earth. You don't have to give yourself a reason to make a colony in space. You can just make the colony in space, you know, or you can just make Earth better. But to be like, you know, the opposite. That's it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and on that, it's 100% right. They could fix the earth. They could, but what they're doing is I'm going to run away from the consequences of my actions. And I'm going to run away from these people who I've screwed over to get my bazillions, whatever it is. And I'm going to leave them there because I can't sleep at night knowing that they could come right over my fence in my normal house on earth. Right. The gardener, they might put the shears in my back. Like I worry about that. Better to use my resources and keep all my resources and take off instead of help.
Which is exactly the justification used to come to America, you know what I mean? And then you label it manifest destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like even more of you giving your own justification for doing horrible things to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously, right, capitalism is incredibly extractive, but like that just goes to show you that's the extreme of that belief, right? That you can just extract, and just move on to the next thing, right? Because next quarter is a new financial quarter, and you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to plan any further in advance than maybe the next quarter or the next year. You don't need to put the work in to build something that'll work. You just need to keep doing the thing that's extracting now until you absolutely can't extract anymore. Then you move on and extract from the next place. And I don't know. It's in some ways it can get a little sad when the sci-fi, the thing that's supposed to be building an idea of a future, even one that is awe-inspiring, or at least, I don't know, but if not awe-inspiring, then amazing to behold, right? Like, is also like kind of stuck in a pretty nihilistic view if you really like open it up a little bit.
Even kind of bring it to modern day, even the retort, if you don't like America, it's like, well, then leave. That's always the answer. Just leave and do it somewhere else. Do it somewhere else. We don't like it, we'll leave. We'll go to space. We'll kick some other people off their land. Which obviously is harder to do now in a world where computers and everything is kind of recorded. But that was the mentality that built this country, that still exists in this country. Even if you complain about it, that's what they think you should do. Well, you're gonna complain and just leave. That's always the answer. And now let's get to casting, because we've been here for a bit. Let's get to casting.
Let's do it.
Before we do that,
go ahead.
I just want to throw one more thing out and see what you guys thought about it. Like the villain, Charlton Copley's villain, Kruger. Like, I did think that there was something very strange about this movie, especially in that back half or last third. Like, clearly you're supposed to get how villainous this character is because he like really enjoys doing a lot of evil stuff. But like that all is like on brown people. Like they are all the victims of his violence. And then like watching him like kind of celebrate that violence as this, brown person or black person is blown up or killed in some other like really dynamic and visually striking way. It almost seemed like the movie luxuriated in the death of like people of color in a big way. And like, as much as I enjoyed some of the sci-fi elements, like that's kind of the thing that maybe is the unforgivable piece, or it'll make it so I can't like give it a C+. What did you guys like think about some of that violence piece?
The violence, and also, of course, he kidnaps. So Dana's childhood friend, her name is Frey. They meet again when she's an adult. She's a nurse, of course, because minorities are always like nurses because they help people. But her daughter has cancer, and that becomes a major point because her daughter needs to get to a med bay in Elysium to save her. But anyway, Matt Damon goes to see her when he gets like stabbed after a big fight. She helps him, and then she's like, well, can you take my daughter? He's like, I can't take her. I'm about to die. Like, but they track him and they know that he visited her. So they kidnap her, this bad guy. And of course, not 1 minute in the kidnapping, he's intimating, forcing a sexual relationship on her. you know, and that goes, that's the same, you know, same kind of violence that you're talking about. And it's like,
100%.
you know, it hung around there a lot, like that, you know, and he kept coming back to it and like smelling her and stuff. And it was like, we get to these creepy, we get to these evil.
Right.
I also get that he doesn't really have a motivation. So you just make him, you know, you luxuriate in how he treats darker skinned people throughout. And like you said, that part was like, man, what, you know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
She's already a hostage. Her daughter's about to die. Do we need another layer of him being like that? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I noticed that like the killings of all the darker skinned people by this guy, even when Matt Damon was about to face him off as they're at the end of the movie, and there's one like black guy with him. It's like the
Right.
way that black guy died was just horrifying. And then finally Matt Damon, and then Matt Damon takes off like no remorse, like that guy had my back, I'm running. It was pretty rough, but this might be me looking too deeply into it, but
That's what we're here for.
that's what we're here for. I know for sure that guy who plays the villain, I don't know his name, but he is South African.
Okay.
And if we want to take it as, oh, this South African white man is staying back on Earth, wreaking havoc on these darker skinned people and their land in order to like appease to the other rich people in Elysium. I feel like there might be something there. Whether Neil was doing that on purpose or not, I just know Neil is friends with the dude. And so he was like, oh man, this guy's funny. And he was in District 9 and he wasn't an actor, but just a funny guy. Let's have him back in. There could be something in that.
Just to contrast it, like whenever like the white people died in this movie, it was more direct. Like he stabbed somebody, he just cut Jodie Foster, stabbed her in the neck, and she had like a long death. She almost could have been saved. But then when they killed like a black person or Hispanic person, whatever, whoever, I mean, it was always like they explode from the inside, or you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
on level 10.
Limbs
That was really
everywhere.
the contrast of it, you know.
Definitely.
And all of his henchmen were white as well.
All his henchmen were white. Why not make one of them like just,
Yeah.
if you're really talking about equality, and then the bad people would be black too. And if he's like just trying to torture people, like, you know, he took a liking to her, but he could have had a harem of girls too. You know what I mean? That were like of different races. If that's how bad he is, you know.
Yeah. No.
So it
Yeah,
is about what you put on the screen. What you know, what we see is like, it is sending a message. Everything is, you know, everything that's put out there is sending a message.
True.
Right. It's decisions, right? Somebody made the choice to have it be that way, right?
Whether that choice was conscious or unconscious, like
Yeah,
says a lot.
How they were thinking about it.
Truly.
Let's do some casting. I don't know how many you guys did. I just got a couple in mind.
Yeah, I only did a couple. I didn't do, probably got 3 or 4.
I did a ton, but we don't have to do them all.
Yeah, once we kind of run out, we can just let you go. Like this
Yeah,
person is
for sure.
I mean, we'll start with Matt Damon. Who you guys got for Matty Matt?
I'll go. I got Pod Fave, Amon Fave, great actor, Coleman Domingo. Throw him in there. He could do anything.
Love it.
Yeah, we love Coleman. Bernard, who you got?
For sure. Might hear Coleman said a little bit later by me, but for Max, so so my casting is funny because, like I said already, I'm Afro Latino, I'm Black and Latin, and I didn't really think about it, but I did notice one thing that we've already talked about, which is like just the overwhelming lack of Black people in this future LA. And so, but in order to stick with like the big Hispanic element that the movie does have, I decided to cast all Afro-Latino actors, with the exception of the main guy. I decided to do what they did with Matt Damon and have it not be somebody who was Latino. I went with Michael B. Jordan. I felt it needed to be somebody who
butts in the seats.
Yeah, had to put butts in the seats, had to maybe look like they had a little bit of a pass, like they could handle themselves in a fight or something like that, but also have, like that sensitive thing that you can like kind of feel for. And I think that's the thing that Mike does great, right? He looks like a tough guy who can handle himself, but yet is also like you feel for him.
I went with Trevante Rhodes.
I thought about Trevante. I did
Moonlight. He's on the Mike Tyson Hulu series. Hey, Trevante, he's next up. Next up.
Definitely.
Who else we got here? What about Jodie Foster?
Oh, Jodie
Foster's
Foster.
character.
I didn't cast her, but I will. I'll think of something.
Okay.
All right. Bernard, you got somebody, or I can go?
Yeah, I go. So Jodie Foster had that was one of the ones that I had too. It was tough for me to decide, but I think I have a decision. Gina Torres.
Legend, Gina Torres. But if you have Gina Torres, you have to have DB Woodside. They do not do a project together without each other in the last 6-7 years.
That is true, and I do not have DB Woodside.
Everything we watch, and then she pops up. Like we were watching Suits, and she's in it. And then season like 5, he's like the love interest. And then we're watching 911 Lone Star, and then he's the love interest. And then we're watching this movie, A Perfect Kind, on Netflix, and he's the ex-husband. She's the boss of this lady, of the main character, and he's the main character's ex-boyfriend. And it's just like they don't do a movie without each other. It's in the contract. or a TV or anything. So for Jodie Foster's character, I went Patina Miller, who is the mom on Book of Canaan, Power Book 3. She's really tough, man. I really like this actress. I think, and I kind of went like, I'm trying to just bring more Black names into it. Right. So I didn't go with like, so I'm going with people maybe people don't know that well.
Those are both great. If we have an unlimited budget, I'm going to go with Viola Davis. Put her in. Throw her in.
Is a populist pick. He's gonna give you a name.
Oh yeah.
Hey man, we're trying to get an Oscar maybe nod on this one.
We're stepping up. What about the bad guy whose name is Kruger, which I thought was interesting too. Like it's a Freddy Krueger thing. But who you got for Krueger?
So my pick might be just go with it. All right. I think because just the look of Krueger and how like kind of insane he is, I'm gonna give him his acting debut. I'm gonna throw Jimmy Butler in there. Put Jimmy Butler in there.
Miami Heat basketball superstar Jimmy Butler.
Yes.
Love it.
Jimmy Butler.
Bernard, who you got? I'm just gonna go off I'm rocking with it though. I'm not mad. He's got a great look, Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how.
7. So when you roll the credits, the NBA guys are giants. But I'm not mad at it. I'm tall, put me in front of the camera too. So 6'7", Jimmy Butler as the bad guy.
Throw him in there. It'll be great.
Fantastic.
Oh, that actually brings me to one real quick thing. We're kind of running out of time, but like space travel also lacks imagination. They should build space travel with somebody super tall in mind. And I say that because I'm super tall, and I would never be able to go to space even if it was like a commercial flight. I can barely fly to New York sometimes if I don't book in advance enough. So that's just that's a big man, right? Okay, who you got? Bernard, the bad guy for Krueger.
Yeah, Krueger, Coleman Domingo for sure. But he's intimidating guy. That voice, I feel like he could do it.
Yeah,
I went with so I went with J. Alphonse Nicholson, who is Lil Murder on P-Valley. He is giving an amazing performance, especially season 2 of P-Valley. If you if you watch it, if you haven't, highly recommend the show. P-Valley, J. Alphonse Nicholson. It's his time. It's his chance. Next up.
Put him in.
What else? There's actually another actor on that show I really like. I can't remember his name, who could be a great villain. He was just played like a crazy guy on the show. and they were lovers actually. J. Alfonso and the guy, but I can't remember his name now. But we'll cast him in something later. Moving on. Those are really like the main castable roles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess there's like three more. There's Alice Braga, who was Frey, the kind of childhood friend. Did you
Yeah.
guys cast that one?
Yeah. I cast that one with I wanted to say friend of the pod, but I guess friend of just UCB, like the friend of the comedy world, Kirby Howell Baptiste.
Oh yeah, man, Kirby.
Yeah,
For sure. She's been killing it.
truly.
And we definitely casted her before this pod. Bernard, who you got for Frey?
For sure. So had to re-team a great duo, Tessa Thompson, Afro Latina
Oh,
actress.
oh,
Yeah.
Know she can kill that role, so we had to go for it.
definitely.
I'm gonna go with what is her name? Haley Kilgore, also from Canaan. And she has a movie coming out called Cinnamon. And I saw the trailer for that, and I've been watching her on Book of Kaden. And I really liked the trailer. I was like, I gotta cast her in something. So I've been holding her name to use it. Haley Kilgore on Power Book 3.
Okay.
Power 3, Book of Kaden, whatever it's called. And I think the other like main ones would be the Diego Luna character, kind of the buddy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get around to casting those ones, but did you,
Bernard, you got
Bernard?
one?
Sure. So for that one, Jarrell Jerome, who he was
Oh, yeah.
Corey Wise and
And he's
When
on,
They See Us.
he's on I'm a Virgo right now, where he plays a 13-foot man.
That's
Really
right. That's right.
No, yeah. I'm gonna go with David Diggs.
Mm,
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
yeah.
Then I
That's-
think with kind of two more relevant characters. There's William Fichtner's character, who was the billionaire.
Right.
Elysium.
Yeah. Yeah. I cast that one. But for the one we just did, I didn't cast it, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw myself in there. I'll play that role.
Love it. Yeah,
Love it. Go for
that's
it.
what the people want to see, to be honest. Who do you got for the billionaire guy?
So for the billionaire character, I thought Don Cheadle. Throw him in there.
Don doesn't get enough love. Even on this pod, we don't cast Don enough.
I
man.
know.
Big
know.
DC for sure. For
Under
sure.
rep.
OG.
Mhm.
No, you got somebody for that character?
Yes, sir. So I went with Wilson Cruz. He's Wilson Cruz OG. Like I think he's like original Rent cast, that going all the way back, but he plays the doctor on Star Trek Discovery. And you know, he's just great on that show.
yeah.
Wonderful. So yeah, Wilson Cruz. I think he could kill that.
I'm gonna go with
Awesome.
an older guy. I think I'm casting older, but I saw his name going through the credits of these other shows. Russell Hornsby.
Ooh.
Russell he's just been in a lot of stuff. He was in Creed 2, shout out, but he was also played Don King in a project a long time ago. He was the older son in Fences. If anybody seen Fences.
Mhm.
He was Don King in the Mike Tyson show. That's where I saw his name. And I was like, oh yeah. And what was that soap opera show? Lincoln Heights. Remember Lincoln Heights?
Oh
Wow.
man.
Yeah.
15 years ago,
Wow.
he was a dad of Lincoln
Yeah.
Heights.
Mhm.
And also a great ESPN show called Playmakers about the NFL that they canceled because it was too good. That's pretty much. Oh, and then Spider, the kind of underground smuggler dude. That would be the last like main role, I think.
The Wagner Moore character.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go and throw in just because he's fun. DC Young Fly. I'm gonna throw him in there
Love
too.
it. That seems right, man. That
Okay.
character
Let's
character's
do
got
it.
so much like weird manic energy. I feel like DC
Yeah.
probably
Encapsulate it. Yeah.
I'm with it. I went Laz Alonso. He's on The Boys right now. He's been in like one of the
Laz
Fast and
Alonso.
Furious joints. So yeah,
Yeah.
Laz Alonso. He's an OG in that space. So I felt like he had to be it.
That's great.
I'm gonna go with Yolan Noel. Is that his name?
Mhm.
Ron Noel, who was in the first Purge. He was an Insecure. Yeah, young actor coming up,
Mm-hmm.
give him a shot. And because also some of these, I'm gonna go with Yolanda. And
Oh
let
yeah,
him be like a really crazy character. And that, I think that's really the main roles of the movie. Of course, only one woman, so that's how these things be.
For sure, for sure.
Two
truly.
women. We have Frey and Jodie
Uh,
Foster.
Delacourt, Jodie Foster's character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Elysium, it brings up so many themes. You could really talk about it for a long time.
Truly.
As a movie, it's all right.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't block out the time to watch it, but if you come across it
Yeah.
on Amazon Prime, it doesn't
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
biggest recommendation, but it gets like a tacit recommendation.
Yeah. It's a fun movie. You watch it on 2x speed, and then you'll be all right.
Yeah,
Watch that. If you like action, there's action for you. It's like a buffet of themes. If you want any, you could just pull it out. It's a
Take
fun
what you
movie.
want, leave what you don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
For sure. Some of the action stuff was really cool, and I think some of it still holds up even 10 years later with some of the drones and the soldiers and robot police and all that stuff.
Mhm.
You want some sci-fi stuff? Check it out. Why not?
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. We'll have Bernard back again at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, please. Be
Awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Peace.
joining us.
Peace.
Peace.